Hey everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and as you can tell from the title of this video, I'm going to tell you all about getting my library card. I'm so excited, and you're like, why is that exciting? I'm going to explain, but before we do that, I want to apologize for the weird lighting, because it's like 10 o'clock at night, or something like that, and I usually have light coming from the window, because I record during the day and have like natural light on this side, and ring light on this side, but we don't have no natural light today, because it's, like 9, 10 o'clock at night, but it's all good. I also left my prayer cards up here. I hope that's not too distracting. I'm going to have those up for the next couple of videos because it's kind of a pain in the butt to take it down every time. I probably need like a backdrop. I don't know. We're gonna worry about that later. Y'all aren't here to talk about my backdrop. Okay, so a library card. As someone who reads as much as I read, why is this suddenly so exciting to have a library card? You're like, didn't you already have one? And the answer to that is yes, but no. Alright, so back when I was growing up in Hammond, Indiana, back in the upper left armpit of Indiana, in a region called the Region Rat area of Indiana, we had an amazing library. I have to admit that Hammond, for having all the issues it had when I was growing up and being like high poverty and whatnot, we had a great library. Like, our library was phenomenal. And we also had a great county library that we partnered with. So you had so many opportunities for new books. There were constantly, like, the new book section of that library was like mind-blowing. And from the people I know who still live in Hammond, that library is still as awesome as it was when we were growing up. Great librarians, great collection, not only of new books, but of really, really interesting older books. They have like a phenomenal old book collection, and they have some really cool books about like the history of the area and the history of Hammond, like top-notch library. And I got really spoiled because I just kind of expect all libraries to be that good because that's what I grew up with. But as I grew up and started moving around the country, I realized that that's not the case. Some libraries are better than others because it depends on like tax dollars and how many people donate to the library. And there's a lot that kind of, I'm not a librarian, but if you are, feel free to like, shoot me a video or a comment about how it all works. But I know that not all libraries are created equal. And there are some high poverty areas that don't have great libraries. So we are very, very blessed to have the library that we had in Hammond because, the area that I was in was there was a lot of people that were on that poverty level. So anyway, I, about 10 years ago, moved to a suburb of Indianapolis, and this suburb was its own library. It was one library in a small suburb of Indianapolis, and it was not connected to the Indianapolis Public Library. So it had a super small collection, and it did not have a lot of money. In fact, it had very limited hours because they couldn't afford to pay staff, and they didn't have hardly any money for new books. New books were books that people donated to the library. So it was not uncommon for the new book section to be books that were like 3 years old, because they just had no money for books. And great library, great librarians, loved the people there. But I mean, I'm talking they were open like 8 to 2, Monday through Friday, 1 to 5 on a Saturday. They just had no money. And so I got really used to reading ebooks at that time because they just didn't have a very good selection of books. So then I moved to Virginia for about 1.5 years, and I just never got a library card because I knew I was only there temporarily. Like, I took the job in Virginia knowing that it was going to be a stepping stone position that would send me back to corporate, which would be back in Indiana. So I didn't really get attached to anything in Virginia, if that makes sense, because I knew it was just a stop on the road kind of thing, and I just never got a library card. I read a lot of ebooks or went to like the local bookstore and bought new books, or went to used bookstores and did the same thing. So I would just buy books, and then I would give them away to half-price books, and then I would buy more books and give them away to like half-price books, and that's what I did for 1.5 years. So then we moved back to Indiana. I just said the word back really weird, but that's okay. And we, again, moved to a very small town in Indiana that was a one-library town that was not connected to a county library and was just its own entity, and again had the very, very small book selection. I did get a library card because they had connections to Overdrive, which you can get ebooks from, and some audiobooks, but the ebook and audiobook selection was so tiny that I tried it for like 6 months to a year and just was not happy because you would go to check out an ebook or an audiobook and you would wait. It would be like 6 months later and you would get the notification that you can get on Overdrive and download your book. And I'm like, I already bought the ebook because I was waiting on y'all and it took 6 months. So I just haven't really used a library in almost a decade. I mean, I have, but I haven't because I just haven't been happy with the libraries I was in, which is very eye-opening. And I will say that moving around the country for me was a great eye-opener because I wonder how many people, like, I just take for granted that people have access to books, and yes, that's true, but do you have access to the same books that I have access to? It's a big question, and I would love to, like, get some insight from librarians. So if there are any booktubers on here that are also librarians, I would love to hear from you, or if you know someone who is, let me know. I would love to, like, hear your insight on that, because I'm thinking, like, what if you're, like, in a smaller area that's, like, super high poverty, or maybe you're in a big city, but I'm thinking, like, Detroit, for example. What's your library like? Because that's such a high poverty city. Anyway, enough about that. That's not why you're here either, but just, it's something that interests me, and I'm kind of, like, wondering, like, what can we do to make sure more libraries have more books? But anywho, I'm going to carry on here. Carry on, Mary. Focus. All right. So I decided on Saturday, since I finally, like, settled down and I have a house and I'm, like, putting roots down, I'm like, let's get involved with the local library. You guys, our library is amazing. It is amazing. I'm so excited. It has so many good books. Like, this library system is 5 branches, the main one being like a block from where I work. It's part of a county library system. They had so many new books, and they have Libby, Overdrive, and Hoopla. My mind is blown. It's like, so I was so excited, and I'm going to show you guys the 3 books I picked up. But, like, the new books are, like, new books. They're, like, new books. Like, new books. Like, new books. I'm so excited. So I had to pace myself because I could have walked out with, like, 20 books. And I was like, Mary, control yourself. You have the next 30 years of your life to read the books in this library, so you need to pace yourself. Or more. You know, I said 30 because my loan is 30 years, a house loan. But anywho, hopefully like 50 because I want to live to be like really old. But anywho, we're going to carry on here. I got some really great books, and I'm going to show you the books that I got. First one, I'm going to try to cover up my sticker. You guys, I talked about her in my Christian Romance Rex. It is Karen Kingsbury, and it's To the Moon and Back. Now, this is one of her Baxter series, and I don't know what number it is. So I am so behind on the Baxter series because her ebooks are a little bit pricey. Like, her ebooks are often priced the same as, like, her paperbacks are priced. They're like $6, $7, $8, that kind of thing. And I just kind of fell behind on the Baxter series. But as I mentioned in my video to you guys, the great thing about Karen's books is that they can stand alone. So even though they're part of a series, they can stand alone. And this one really super intrigued me. Now, I don't know what year this was published. This is new to me. I'm going to look and see. But it's new to me because I'm super behind on the Baxter series. I think this is a newer one, but it's just one I haven't read. This is from 2018, so it's a newer Baxter series book, but it's an older one if you actually follow the series. I'm just like a good 5 years behind on the Baxters. So anyway, this one intrigued me because it's the Oklahoma City bombing, and I can remember being a little girl and watching the Oklahoma City bombing on TV and being young enough where I understood what was happening, but I didn't understand what was happening. Like, this was pre 9/11, and I think it was my first glimpse at, like, a super traumatic event that kills a lot of people. And I remember watching my parents on the news and watching my mom cry on the news as she was watching people being carried out of the building and her being so upset. So this was my first time really, like, understanding a major national tragedy like this. And this book actually takes place with Ashley Baxter Blake, who I think I remember her book. I don't know if I remember her book or not. There's so many of them. There's so many Baxters. But she is actually married, and she goes on a trip to the Oklahoma City bombing memorial on the anniversary of the bombing. And I know this because I've watched it talked about in the news a few times, is that people go back there on the anniversary of the bombing. They have special, like, presentations and whatnot, and there's a fence there that people leave notes and like, I miss you, Mom, or whatever, for people they've lost in the bombing. So as she's there, Ashley finds a letter that was left by a boy named Brady, and he's trying to find Jenna. And she reads the letter just because she's being nosy, honestly. And it says in here that he's wrote her a letter every year for like the last 11 years, hoping that she will come back and that they can reconnect. And it turns out that Brady and Jenna are both survivors of parents who'd passed away in the bombings, and they had bonded 11 years ago in a conversation about how I lost my parents, or I lost my mom, or whatever. And Ashley and her husband take it upon themselves to help Jenna and Brady find each other, even though they have no idea who these people are. So I am about a third of the way through the book so far, and they have not actually met each other yet. I'd still Ashley trying to find them and hearing about each of their lives individually and how they connected 11 years ago. I mean, it's a romance, so I'm assuming they end up together at the end, but it's really interesting because it's a lot of great history about the Oklahoma City bombings that even I didn't know. Like, I didn't know about the survivors tree, that there was a tree that, I didn't know this, but I Googled it, and this is true. So there's a tree at the Oklahoma City bombing site that when the bomb happened, everything got annihilated, and this trunk was left as evidence because it had shrapnel from the bombs and stuff, so they didn't tear it down and get rid of it like they did the rest of the material that was at the site. They kept the tree with the idea that after the investigation was over, they would go back and take the tree trunk down. But a year later, when they came and they finally were going to release the site and demolish it and all of that, the tree had branches coming out of it. And so they called is it a horticulturalist? Whoever does trees, arborist, I don't know, whoever does tree stuff. And they came out and they nursed the tree back to health, and the tree is now an actual tree. And it stands as part of the memorial, and it's called the survivor tree, which I didn't know that, and that's kind of cool. So anyway, I'm excited to finish this one. Love Karen Kingsbury, and I'm glad that I can catch up. They have all of her Baxter's, like every single book in the Baxter series they have. So I'm going to go back through and try to catch the ones that I missed. All right, and this one I'm not going to talk too much about because y'all on BookTube have talked about this book forever, and I have not read it. And I saw it on the new bookshelf, and I was like, holy mackerel, I have to pick it up. Spoiler alert. I have seen so many people talk about this book, and this was just sitting there beautifully on the new bookshelf, and I'm like, yes, I'm picking it up. So I don't know a lot about this other than what I've been told. I know it is like, has to do with like online dating. I think, I'm not 100% sure, I could be totally wrong on this. It's something about like online dating and secret identities, and by screen names, not real names, and is one of them royalty maybe? Am I wrong? I don't know. One of them does fanfic. I don't even know. But I've seen people talk about this, and everyone who I've seen talk about this gives it a great review. So I was like, I'm going to pick it up and read it. Join the club. Yay. And then the last one I picked up. I didn't read it yet. I'm not a huge fan of the cartoon covers, but this one, and it is called If I Never Met You. It's by, hold up, Vari. Her name is Vari McFarlane. I had to look because she's got the pronunciation on the back. This one sounds really intriguing. I don't know if anyone's ever read this one yet. It is a fake dating trope, which, I love a good fake dating trope. There's a sticker on the description, which makes me cry a little bit, but it's fine because most of the description is still there. And basically her boyfriend ends things, and she has to see him at work every day. So she, picks up this guy at a broken down elevator. She meets him, and they decide to do a fake dating thing. It looks intriguing. I'm not a big fan of the covers because I don't like cartoons, but it sounds fun, and I'm excited to read it. But this book, I think, is also a newer one. When was this? Because I know, spoiler alerts, from 2020. And then this one is from, hold up, when's this one from? This is also a 2020 book. So, I mean, it feels good to walk in and see, new books. Because for so long I would walk in and be like, oh yeah, our new book was published 5 years ago, and that's fine. But I don't want to have to go out and buy every new book. I like to be able to read it in the library, and then if it's something I love, then I'll buy a physical copy. So I'm excited. I'm really excited by the collection and they have this great section on the history of the region, so I want to like read up on my hometown and all that stuff, so it's going to be really fun. But I'm really excited about the library, and I might be a nerd and see about joining Friends of the Library because I plan on being here for the long haul, and I would love to do that. So I'm excited. I will be there probably every weekend. Let's be honest, I'll get through these 3 books in like a week, and I'm excited that I can actually read because I got my bifocals. I got a library card. It's exciting times in my household today. Alright guys, I'm going to quit singing about the library, but I'm super excited. If you have not checked out your library, you need to, because libraries are the bomb diggity. But I don't get it. Like, I'm really curious to see how people's libraries are, especially in smaller towns, because my experience with smaller town libraries is that sometimes they don't have as good of a collection, which makes me sad. But we'll see. So anyways, let me know, leave me a comment. Let me know, what's your library like? Like, what's your hometown library like? Is it cool like mine, or is it like the ones I had as I was traveling around that are just not as cool? Alright guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye!